Um, uh, I think we have had 2 days of very engrossing presentations by speakers from all over the world. I'll briefly summarize what we have covered during this program. We started off yesterday with a presentation by Pankaj Prasad on the Alaska Railroad, and he did cover the background history of the railway line, its fixed infrastructure. What interested me were really the timber trestle bridges on the railway line, which have now been progressively being converted to more modern bridges. He mentioned a variety of trains: the Glacier Express, the coastal trains, the Seaward, and so on. It was with some very fine photographs, and I think a very fine presentation. We had a presentation from Japan by Dr. Takatsu on the Hikari service, in which he gave us a background of the sort of the origins of the Shinkansen, of the effort that went into it, the technological breakthroughs that were brought about, of the role of its then president, Shinji Sogo. Unfortunately, at the end, when it was inaugurated, he was not able to attend the inaugural function because they had overspent on the project. He also covered the growth in services. It is now a 3-minute service, and the increase in speed from 210 to 285 to 320 kilometers per hour. Its excellent punctuality and safety records. We then had Rahul Himalayan present us with the effort that they have made on luxury trains, particularly the Maharaja Express, which is run by the IRCTC, and their effort in promoting other trains, the Golden Chariot, in along with the Karnataka State Tourism Department, as well as the Deccan Odyssey. And he mentioned various other tourist trains, such as the Buddhist circuit train and so on. Mr. Warren Miller made a presentation on rail cruising and the Indian Pacific. I mean, rail cruising, I was not very clear about what it meant, but now I have understood really of trains which may or may not be luxury trains, but with sort of conducted tours at various locations on its route. He gave us the background of and the history of the Palace on Wheels and the very sad fate of the meter gauge coaches of the first Palace on Wheels that ran in India. He gave us progressive improvements that have taken place on the Blue Train in South Africa. He talked about the Danube Express, the Majestic Imperator, and then he talked about the Indian Pacific and how it has sort of changed over time. Between 1917 and 51, it ran on steam, and the changes that have taken place thereafter. This is a train that runs between Sydney and Perth. Monisha Rajesh gave us a outstanding presentation, I thought, on the return of the night train. Um, uh, and she is such a observant person. I mean, she brought out the finer nuances of what a journey on a night train involves, the friendships that develop on the train, life on the train, the ferry crossing she mentioned, and the role that Austrian is playing in sort of retaining some of its overnight trains. Um, uh, and finally, she talked about the Caledonian Sleeper Express. Well, a very interesting talk indeed. We finished yesterday with Bharat Vora giving us a very detailed description of his journey on the Rossiya. which is the sort of transcontinental journey across from Moscow to Vladivostok, describing the journey en route, some of the stations, Ekaterinburg, Omsk, Khabarovsk, Vladivostok, and so on. And I didn't realize that it's such a long journey, 9,289 kilometers, 56 halts, and the wonderful relationships that they develop along the route. This morning we had an excellent presentation by David Charlesworth, who's really an artist, both in terms of painting and with some excellent photographs. We saw scenes of stations and the sort of views en route. But I did raise a number of problems, which I think we should take note of. Particularly, he mentioned how the distance from the New Jalpaiguri station to the point from where the narrow gauge train starts is quite substantial. He pointed out the terrible state of the old Siliguri town station and the filth along some of the stations, some of the areas along the route near Siliguri. I hope corrective action will be taken in this regard. But he also mentioned the work that has been done by Indian Railways in sort of restoring the railway line after the terrible landslides that took place in Tendaria by building a very large retaining wall. We then had a presentation from the United States by Robert Laparelle on the streamline of things. This is another term that I didn't understand until I saw the presentation, and the kind of changes that have taken place and the effort that has been put into designing locomotive shapes in the United States. Earlier it was with steam, then a whole series of diesel locomotives, the competition between General Motors and Alco, and ending finally with even adopting this on the electric locomotives that came on. And we had a number of trains that were described, the Congressional, the Colorado Eagle, and so on and so forth. And we had this, thereafter we had a presentation by Atulya Sinha, who talked about the Orient Express, and really a very, very interesting talk, bringing out the sort of background, the history, how the first coaches came about of wagon lits, and again, the journey when the train started in 1883, where you had to travel by train by the Orient Express up to a point, then take a ferry across the river, then go up to a port on the Black Sea, and then by again another ferry to Constantinople. He also described various stations, particularly the ones in Constantinople, Sarkechi station, and there's some beautiful photographs of the station. That was followed by a talk on the Deccan Queen by Ashish Kuvelkar, again giving you the background, how the first locomotives came, the initial stations at Kirki and Talegaon, the importance of Kirki because the governor used to get off the train there, scenes around along the railway line, the use of bankers, and so on. And what was really fascinating was, which I did not realize, how, despite being a railwayman, on how enthusiastically locally the birthday celebrations of the train take place, and the role of the local community and in those celebrations. It was an eye opener. We then had a very fine presentation on the opening of the Manchester-Liverpool Railway, which really probably challenges the myth of that we sort of give too much importance to the Stockton-Darlington line, and there are other lines which also merit attention. He talked in terms of three things. One is the civil engineering part of it, and how these initial engineers in 1830 got over the bogs near Chatmos. Then he talked about the mechanical aspect of it. And finally, the people, of how in the inaugural ceremony they were able to get an actress and so many distinguished people from Europe and the United States. Um, and the role that people have played, the importance that people play in actually uh, uh, um, sort of marketing a rail train. Inaugural was a very fortunate event. It was a very interesting talk because it covered a very wide range of issues. The last talk was gripping, moving, outstanding. Deepak Sapra told us about how the Bombay locals bring the world together, rich and poor. And then he talked about the very unfortunate train ride that took place at the time, train journeys that took place at the time of partition. Many people died in that tragedy, and his family was one of the lucky ones who came through. And finally, he highlighted what happened during COVID in India, which is recent memory for most of us, of what took place during the lockdown. And very interesting talk indeed. So I think it's been 2 days of engrossing talks, and I find that those people who joined us on yesterday morning, most of them continued right through these 2 days. So I'd like to, on behalf of the society, thank all the participants and speakers who took part. I'd also like to thank the organizers and especially our secretary, Jail Singh, who has put in a tremendous amount of effort in organizing this event. So thank you very, very much.
The last comment that has come in the chat box, I think, sums it up. It is by Hemant Kumar. He says, I did not think I would sit through the entire 12 presentations, but I did. Enjoyed each one. Got enthused to add some to my bucket list. I think that sums up the conference.
Yeah.
So then
I think we should wind up now. I think we should thank everybody. And
thank you, everyone. And see you next year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Goodbye,
sir.
everyone. Bye.